enrich your and career and professional development. My name is Dua Murtaza Khan. I am majoring in political science and minoring in philosophy. I have the privilege to be a part of the Student Advisory Council, where I am the chair of CBD Committee, which stands for Career and Professional Development Committee, and I am a lead mentor for College of Liberal Arts. And I see some of my mentees here, so shout out to you guys. And Dean Tilbury, I will pass it on to you.
Thank you, Dua. Can everyone hear me? I can hear myself. Okay, great. Thank you, everyone, for being here on this still warm and kind of murky Tuesday afternoon. I just want to say thank you to our Student Advisory Council Professional Development Subcommittee. They've done a great job with this series so far. I think it's really important work that you guys are doing, and that all of you students are here to learn about professional development is really great, because that's one of the key things that we hear from our students is that they really want a little bit more nuts and bolts about what to do after you graduate. And the other thing I hear a lot from our community partners and business people out there in the city is that they really want employees that have the kinds of skills that we teach in the College of Liberal Arts: writing, communication, critical thinking, research, synthesizing different points of view. You are all learning these wonderful, amazing things in your classes, but what you need help with is translating those skills to a language that our employers can understand. So this is the work that this series is doing, and it's really important work. And as always, I want to thank our hardworking students for putting it on. Yay! Thank our amazing Director of Student and Community Engagement, Jenna Heath, who's just... And I'm going to turn it over back to Jenna. Okay, thank you.
I don't know how you follow that, but I'm just really so excited today because we have just one of the best guest speakers I think we're going to have all semester. I know that when I've worked with students for years at this point, and I find more often than not, about a third of the time, when you ask, like, what do you want to do when you graduate? Lawyer. I want to go to law school, which was awesome. That was me when I was an undergrad. Obviously, that's not what happened for me, but hopefully it is what happens for all of you if that's what you want to do. And I'm so excited that today I get to share the stage, so to speak, with a good friend of mine who has done just that with her life. So I think with that, I'm going to let our beautiful Dua introduce our guest speaker.
Thank you so much, Jenna. I have the privilege to introduce Shane Jasmine Young. So Shane grew up in Las Vegas and graduated from Green Valley High School. In April 2000, 5 months pregnant with identical twins, graduated magna cum laude from Pepperdine University in Malibu, California, with a Bachelor's of Science degree in Business Administration. After college, Shane and her family moved back to Las Vegas, where she attended UNLV's Boyd School of Law and earned her law degree in 2004, graduating cum laude and receiving Dean's Award. Following law school, Shane worked in private practice for 2 prestigious national law firms. She was fortunate to gain experience in many different areas of law, including transactional, regulatory, and litigation. As a law firm attorney, Shane had three more children who inspired her to continue her commitment to serving our community, especially representing minors through Children's Attorney Project. The Legal Aid Center of Southern Nevada has recognized Shane for her pro bono work and volunteering hundreds of hours to provide people with free legal aid services. Shane has been selected for the 40 Under 40 Award in the business and named among the legal elite by Nevada Business Magazine as well. So please help me in giving Shane a very warm welcome.
Thank you both so much. I'm so excited to be here. I was telling Jenna earlier that I actually haven't had the opportunity to be a guest lecturer at the main campus. I do a lot of work with the law school since that's where I graduated from. So I'm really excited to be here with you today And this topic is one thing that is so, so important when you're going out, looking for opportunities. I'm actually going through this process right now on the employer side, so I have a lot of things that I can share with you from that perspective that will be helpful for you when you're going in to meet with people. And I can tell you that there's so many times where I just wish we had qualified candidates that knew how to really approach an interview. I've been very unimpressed, underwhelmed with some of the candidates that have walked in my door. So the things that we're going to be discussing are going to be relevant to your life, from this point and moving forward. There's so much of it that translates very, very nicely into very successful tips and strategies for you all to continue to use throughout your lifetime. So I do have some cards, just so you know, they're on this table here. So if you do want to reach out to me, you can reach out to me directly. I'm willing to be a resource if you have questions, especially if you're interested in going into the legal field. Not all of you will, but if you have questions in general, I am available for that. Oh, okay. So as far as before the interview, okay, there we go. Before the interview, one of the things that I find that's really, really important is, as an employer, I'm going to do research on the people that are coming in for an interview. So I do, so it's a good idea for you to be prepared before you come in. Make sure that you really have an understanding of what it is you're looking for and also the company. So research the business, really know what the business does, what services they provide, what they do in the community, the things that are, valuable to them. Go to the website, do Google searches, really go in prepared for the interview. That's always very, very important and impressive when I have a candidate that comes in and says, yeah, I saw on your website, or I saw in this article that you wrote that blah, 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 blah. Like right there, I'm just like, ding, 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 ding. Awesome. So that's really important. Also, if you know who you'll be interviewing with, do a little research on those particular individuals, their backgrounds, their expertise, where they went to school, any different accolades that you can discuss with them. And that's also a question that you can ask when you're setting up the interview of the employer is, who is it that I'll be interviewing with, so that you can have an idea and be really prepared going in. There are some interview questions that you should have prepared. So I always ask at the end of the interview, do you have any questions for me? Is there anything that you're still curious about? And if the person is just like, no, I don't have any questions, it's like, okay, well, did you really think about, or did you really come in here thinking about what you wanted? So as far as the type of interview, Jenna?
Yes, this is us sharing the stage.
Yeah.
So this is so awkward, y'all. We're used to like these big platforms and stuff, and you seriously don't know how lucky you are. Shane usually guest lectures in the law school with like hundreds and hundreds of students, so this is really cool to have her with such an intimate group. But I think, to Shane's point, one of the most important things is it's great when you're thinking of, okay, who am I interviewing with? What is the environment like? Where am I going? You've done the research, but the next step is like, really, what is it actually the interview experience, right? I find oftentimes, especially right now, people don't ask. They're like, oh, it'll be online, because we've been online for the last year and a half and everything's online. Okay, not everything is online right now, right? There's a lot of organizations that are moving back to fully in person and expecting that of their employees. So it's super important to ask those types of questions, because it is a different dynamic, right? Quick, funny story. I had a great, wonderful student, cute as a bug here, but she really did think the interview was on Zoom. And so she was going into her little office, she was ready to go, had the Zoom pulled up, whole thing. And she was like, oh, that's so weird, they didn't send me a link. So she calls the assistant, she's like, hey, I'm looking for the link, I don't have it. And the girl was like, I don't know what you're talking about. It is definitely right here and you were 20 minutes late. And obviously she didn't get that job, right? So, but I would love to say like, oh, it wasn't her fault, it was a miscommunication. But honestly, when you're interviewing for a job, that is on you. That kind of is her fault. So really try to go the extra mile to make sure that you understand the experience that you're about to have. Also, there is absolutely a different environment when you're in group settings, whether it's a group of employers or it's a group of interviewees, right? If you know that we all know you're going to be comparing with other people when you're interviewing, because that's kind of literally what the job process is about. But it's different when there's 4 of you in front of an employer trying to sell yourself on why you're the best candidate. You really do have to show up differently. And I find, especially when you're going into your first real job interview, that can be very overwhelming because you already are a little nervous. Your confidence is probably not 100% there. So you really need to make sure that if you're going into a group interview, really making sure you're prepared for that. And to Shane's point, like, it's totally okay to ask those questions when you're setting up the interview, saying like, you know, is there going to be multiple candidates at the same time? Or is there going to be multiple partners from the law firm? That way you're prepared and you can walk into it knowing what to expect, right? So this is a good starting place. I would say, like, there are things you need to do when you're in the room and ready to go. And there's some things you need to do prep, getting into the room. This is prep, getting into the room. So back over to you. I feel like we're on a game show. This is fun.
Thank you, Jenna. All right, so another really important part is dressing the part, right? You want to make sure that you're dressing professionally, that you're showing up really in your best form. And so always dress to impress. One key or tip that I gave one of the employees that I have was, she said something to the effect of, well, I just wasn't sure like if this was going to be like too dressy or too formal. This was like dressing inside the office. It was a question. And I said, one tip that I would give you in life is that whenever there might be a question, always overdress. You never want to be the person in the room or at the event that's underdressed, because that's just not a good feeling. So always dress to impress. That's really important. Your clothing should be neat, clean, ironed. So please no wrinkles. Like you didn't just roll out of bed, like you were there, you know, prepared. Probably if you have like a nice suit, professional clothing is really, really a great way to show up for these types of first impressions. You know the same, right? You never get a second chance to make a first impression. So this is your chance. I would keep also accessories to a minimum. So you don't want to have a bunch of jewelry, but if you do have, you know, like simple, you know, classic earrings, maybe a little bit of jewelry, like a ring, a watch, you know, bracelet, that type of thing, it is okay. Also be careful about things that might be a little offensive, like cologne, strong smelling perfumes. Sometimes people have sensitivities or allergies, and that could be really, really off-putting or even dangerous, you know, health-wise. You wouldn't want to go into an interview where you cause someone to have like an allergic reaction or something like that, right?
That's happening.
Yeah.
Don't be that person.
Yes. So the goal, as far as like during the interview, you want to focus on listening, you know, like really listening to what the interviewer is sharing with you, so that you can be engaging and you can ask thoughtful questions after you've taken in some of the information that they're sharing with you. This is a good tip also, just not to talk too much. I know sometimes it's just like a nervous energy that we might have where we feel like we have to fill the space with just words. Don't feel the need to do that. Just try to relax into it. I know it's easier said than done, but if you just, you know, even before going into the interview, just take a few moments, like spend a little bit of time, even if it's just sitting in your car, where you're just like, all right, you know, set your intention, take a moment to take a few deep breaths, calm yourself down, you know, do something that like helps relax you, you know, where you feel comfortable. And then also going back to the dress, you know, dressing the part, when you look good and you're wearing something that you feel you look good in, then it makes you feel better. You exude a different type of energy. So that's important. If you have the ability to provide examples of how your skill set or any qualities that you have will go towards meeting the expectations of the role that you're interviewing for, that's always a great way to show the employer that you've thought about things ahead of time, that you are a great fit, that there's this potential to be able to continue to expand upon those things. It's important to be confident, but there's a fine line between confidence and arrogance, right? So you want to make sure that you have a level of confidence and you're presenting yourself in that light, but not to the extent that it's over the top or aggressive or arrogant. So always have, you know, that bit of humility. I like to, when we're meeting someone for the first time, especially in the case of like an interview, you want to address the people that you're dealing with, you know, Mr. or Ms. And I always like, you know, or I prefer to address people, you know, as, you know, sir and ma'am, until they tell you, okay, well, call me Shane, please. You know, like I'm very informal once we have a connection, but it's always good to have that level of respect going into it. And really the goal is to make, to see if it's a good fit, not only from the employer's perspective, but also from your perspective as well. You know, is that somewhere that you see yourself with the ability to grow and contribute? Because I think another thing that we don't often think about is sometimes we're focused on, this is the type of job that I should have. This is the type of money that I should be making. And then you go and you get this job that you're miserable in, and then the employer has invested time to train you, and you've invested time to learn certain things, and then it doesn't end up working out. So really doing the research, as we've been talking about ahead of time, to see if this is something that you really would be interested in. I know from an employer standpoint that whenever I hire someone, it's with the intention of it being long-term. And I don't want to invest a bunch of time and resources into an individual that's just going to leave and then not have the opportunity to continue that growth and expansion. So as far as end of interview questions, this is really important, as we mentioned earlier, that you really have some questions prepared ahead of time, or even questions that you think of during the interview. So some good ones are listed here, like what do you think are the most important qualities for someone to succeed or excel in this role? And then also tying in, once you ask that question and you hear the response from the employer, also being able to tie in, you know, how you might be able to fit that expectation. Asking about the company's culture. My company's culture is really important. I've worked really hard to create a space that I love to go to every day. And so creating a good work environment is important for me, having really good team members. So finding out, as we were talking earlier, what the company's culture is, asking questions like, what's the best thing about working for this company? You know, what are the things that make this company, you know, different or unique? That's a good question. Asking how you compare to the other candidates that have been interviewed for the role. Also, this is a really good question in any case, is always asking what the next steps of the interview process are, so you know what the expectation is, when they plan to get back to you, and so forth. What's the most important thing I can accomplish in the first 60 days? I love this one, especially because it shows the employer that you're thinking about the future. Like, okay, what are the expectations? What are the goals or the standards or metrics that I need to be hitting or satisfying in order to really be successful in this role? And then also, you know, who would I reach out to going forward if I have any questions? Back to you, Jenna.
I'm seriously enjoying this more than you know, more than you know. My first major in college was journalism, and I always thought it'd be so cool to be a reporter because I love talking, obviously. But turns out I'm not very good at grammar, spelling, or punctuation. So that was a challenge for me. Anyway, so this is great. So what I wanted to chat about was a little bit of how do you actually answer interview questions, right? So we've given you a lot of the nuts and bolts, which is super important. Like all of those things are very vital. But also important is how do you actually answer the question when they say, tell me a little bit about yourself, or when they ask, tell me about a time that you failed, or tell me your most proud accomplishment, right? So my experience coaching literally thousands of people over the years and as a career coach and a career consultant is that most people tend to answer those questions with just like a list. And that doesn't really help us to understand what you did, how you did it, or how you were successful or how you failed, right? So it doesn't get to the point, right? So a lot of times students will say, you know, I don't understand why I didn't get that job. I was the perfect fit. That may be true, absolutely. But how you presented yourself in the interview, was that a perfect fit? Because they don't know you walking into that room, right? They know you on a piece of paper and that's about it. So how you present yourself and how you answer the questions are critical. So I want to show you probably the easiest way I've ever seen to interview. And pretty much everyone can remember it as long as you can remember 4 letters. Can you remember 4 letters? Excellent. Zoom, 4 letters. Are we good? Excellent. I'm getting yeses. Thanks. At least I think that's a yes. I can't read that part.
He's shaking his
So, all right, so the best option here is, as Shane mentioned earlier, you want to answer all questions with an example whenever possible. And a lot of students really struggle with this because they're like, I haven't had a full-time job, or I haven't worked at a law firm, or I haven't worked in mental health yet. Of course you haven't. You're a student. We expect that. We don't expect you to have professional experience yet. That doesn't mean you haven't had experiences, right? How many of you have a part-time job or a full-time job or a job of some capacity? Okay, most of you. How many of you are in a club, an organization, student government? Also most of you. Excellent. How many of you have ever done anything in your entire life where you traded time for money in some capacity? Everyone. Fabulous. That means you've been babysitting, nannying, walking a dog, who knows, right? Okay, so all of you have had some sort of experiences in your life. Are all of you currently enrolled in classes? If you don't say yes, I have no idea how you got in this room. Perfect, great, laughter is always good. So yes, you all have done things. Like, stop devaluing yourself and assuming that you have no idea how to do anything, because that's not true. You just don't know how to take the experiences you have done and translate them into ways that an employer will understand the value, right? I think that's the biggest disconnect I've seen in the world, is the experiences students have and the understanding that employers have of those experiences. And just gonna be transparent with you for a second, that's not their job. It is not their job to figure out how to understand what you've done. That's your job to really showcase and sell to them what you've done in a way that makes sense to them, right? So how do we do that? Okay, so the STAR method stands for situation, task, action, result. Pretty easy, right? 4 letters: situation, task, action, result. So let's say you're in an interview and someone's asking you, tell me about a time that you failed. These questions tend to trip people up very quickly because there's 2 types of interview questions: negative-based interview questions and positive-based interview questions. So most questions, usually, depending on the organization, will try to go for positive-based questions. However, a lot of times they will strategically throw out negative-based interview questions, because that's usually where people trip up. They really are testing you. So if you feel that way in an interview, they really are. They're trying to get to know you and understand, how do you work under pressure? How do you communicate? How do you understand what you've done? Because those are all skills you're going to need in pretty much any job you ever do. So the question is, tell me about a time that you failed. So let's say, I'm not going to have you raise your hands because that would be embarrassing, but I'm going to say that maybe some of you have failed a class at some experience in your life. And if you haven't, we'll just use me as a perfect example, because although I'm on this side now and I get to say all these great things that I've done in my career, at one point I wasn't doing great. I failed the class. It was not a great time in my life. So if that ever happens to you, it's okay. You're going to survive. I promise. It'll be okay. But that's a good example for this question. Most people are like, oh my gosh, I don't want them to ever know that I failed, or that I did anything wrong, or that I did anything poorly. So let's just be real for a second. You're all human. None of us are perfect. None of us are going to be perfect. So showcasing your failures in a way that shows that you're learning, you're trying to be better, you've learned from those experiences, actually is exactly what employers want. Because we know you're not perfect humans. We just want to know when you fail, when you mess up. Do you ask for advice? Do you seek counsel? And do you try to get better next time, right? So in this example, let's say you're talking about how you failed this class, right? So instead of saying, yeah, I failed the class once and that was kind of a failure, that was not a good moment for me. Okay, well, thank you for that information, right? So like, you told me what happened, but you didn't really tell me what happened in a way that makes you look good, right? Back to a few slides ago, your goal through the interview process is for them to like you, for them to want to hire you. So let's think of a better way to answer this. So I actually took philosophy 420 last semester, and it was a really challenging class, and transparently, COVID has been a little hard on me, just like I'm sure it's been hard on you. So I didn't do very well in the class, and at the end of the semester, I realized I was going to fail. Instead of just taking that failure and being like, well, it is what it is, I decided to go back to the professor and ask if I could retake the class. I asked what I could do better to make sure I could pass the following time. Fast forward to this semester, I've actually retaken the class. I got an A, and the professor offered me to be a TA for the class, so I actually get to help other students now pass the class. So I think that's the time that I really did fail, but I turned it into a learning opportunity where I now get to help other people. Would you hire me if I said that? Yeah, totally, right? I would hire me if I said that. But that's exactly what they're looking for, right? You're human, you're gonna fail, you're gonna have moments you don't do your best, but did you learn from it? How are you turning it into a win, right? And you can apply that to anything, right? Maybe you got fired at a job, maybe something not as dramatic. Maybe you just showed up late one day, right? That could feel like a failure to a lot of you. So how do you flip that and turn it into positive, right? So again, situation, failed the class. The task, had to retake the class. The action, I talked to the professor, I figured out what I could do. And the result, I actually was a TA, I got to help other people, I passed the class, I learned my lesson, right? So if you follow this model for pretty much any question you're ever asked and literally follow it, you will probably do far better than whatever you're doing right now. Simply because, one, you're talking enough for me to understand what happened. To Shane's point, people either talk too much or too little, or so you'll give them all the information they want, and on top of that, they'll actually understand the situation, because for the most part, anyone you work for most likely will have at least a bachelor's degree, so they'll know what it's like to potentially fail a class and what that experience could be like. And then you're talking about how you learned, right? This is, if you forget everything I just said, just remember this part. Talk about how you learned. How are you doing better next time? Like, what are you taking out of this situation? Because most of the time when we think of failures, we kind of like hold it all in and we're like, I'm never going to talk about this ever again. This is a horrible experience. Okay, flip the script a little bit. Talk about your failure in a way that shows people, I did this, it wasn't great, but I fixed it, I did better, and I'm never going to do it again, right? That's the best way. So that's my STAR method. STAR. All right, so now we're going to do our most exciting part, in my opinion. We're going to have a couple of our students join us up front for some mock interviewing. So can everyone please welcome Oscar, our bad interviewer of the day.
Okay, so is this one? Okay, yeah. All right, so for this scenario, I'm going to be the employer that is interviewing Oscar. So he's the interviewee. All right. Hi, Oscar. Did you bring a copy of your resume?
Yeah, I did.
Awesome. Okay. All right, so just kind of looking through your resume, there's not really that much here. So tell me a little bit about yourself.
I actually took some time off. I've been traveling for a bit, so I haven't really been working a lot.
Okay. All right. So tell me maybe a little bit about your strengths. What are some things that you might be good at?
Well, my friends always tell me I can talk to anybody. I'm a good conversationist, I guess. Whenever I'm in a room, everybody likes to talk to me. I attract good vibes.
Oh, attract good vibes. Okay, noted. What about your weaknesses?
I don't think I have any, to be honest. Maybe my biggest weakness is like I like to sleep late. I don't like to wake up early for anything, to be honest. Like at my old job, I used to wake up very late, be like 2 hours late. But my boss is pretty cool about it. So
So you like to sleep late. Sounds like you're lazy. No. No?
I wouldn't say that.
No? Okay. Well, why do you want to work here?
I don't know. I feel like I heard about the job. I think it's a good opportunity. I'm living at home with my mom, so I need more things to do in my life.
Oh, so just kind of looking to fill your schedule. Okay, well, thank you very much, Oscar.
I think someone missed their career in comedy. Yes, absolutely. Okay, so does anyone want to share maybe what Oscar didn't do right? Yes.
Pull the resume out of his pocket.
Oh yeah, resume in the pocket. Shane, do we like that?
No.
No, we don't like that. Okay, Sabrina?
I don't know if it was intentional with how you dressed for this skit, but coming to an interview with like a pretty ripped jeans and everything else, that was different.
Absolutely intentional. Oscar is actually a very well put together human being. Usually, most of the time. But yes, how do you think maybe we could have dressed more appropriately?
So I would say definitely something professional. So depending on the type of work that you would be doing in that position, even if it's not like in office setting, I think it's always great to show up overdressed, even if that's what it might be considered. So if you are, a gentleman or a lady, like wearing a suit is always a nice thing, just, professional, slacks, a nice collared shirt, tie, those types of things I think are always great.
I always tell people too, I feel like people get really tripped up about professional dress because you're like, I'm a broke college student, I can barely afford food. Goodwill, seriously, Goodwill. You can find okay, I'm just gonna be honest. I am not like rolling in the dough. I know it looks otherwise, but I'm not. I work in education. Let's just be honest. Wasn't that funny? But seriously, I was at Goodwill a couple weeks ago and I found a bomb, like 3-piece women's suit from Express for like $10.
Wow.
So yes, it was a steal. Any of you that just love bargain hunting, that's me 100%. I don't actually need to shop at Goodwill anymore. I do it by choice.
Yeah. Well, another place also that I found for women more particularly though is Ross.
Yeah.
Like
Ross,
this dress, I got it at Ross.
BT does. She does not need to be
Like
shopping.
$16. You never know.
We all have a good sale. Yeah. So, okay. So dress is super important. Anybody else thoughts on Oscar's bad behavior this morning or afternoon? Yes.
He kind of came like discombobulated, like he wasn't prepared, like he was like all over the place. You could kind of like sense it from like the start.
Yeah, you were a hot mess. We'll do better next time. Anybody? Oh, lots of thoughts. I really want to pull you apart. That's my beautiful purple shirt.
He didn't really seem to care very much. Like when she asked questions, instead of elaborating, there were super short answers. And like the company typically wants to hire somebody to like grow themselves and the person, and he wouldn't pepper them at all.
Yes, totally. That's back to what we were saying, right? Like you can't just say 3 words and assume that they're going to understand really anything about you at all, right? Because if you think about any experience, right? If you were talking to any human being on the face of the planet, if they told you oh, why do you want this job? And you're like, I want good opportunity. Like, would you know anything about them? Right, you wouldn't. Any thoughts? Yes, go ahead.
I was just gonna give another example. We kind of saw that fine line between confidence and arrogance when he said that he didn't have any weaknesses.
We're all human, friends. We all have weaknesses. Okay, I feel like we could tear apart Oscar all afternoon, but let's give Oscar a big round of applause. Oscar's #1 fan is Zach, in case you were curious about that. I don't want him to walk out of this room and feel like he's actually sucky. He's the best person ever. He's really great and intelligent. He's going to do good things with his life. So, do you feel better now? You look like you're about to cry. Okay, we're better. Excellent. And we've made it. Okay, so on to our good interview. So, I'm going to invite Mr. Edgar up to the stage.
Thank you. Hi, Edgar. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Did you bring a copy of your resume?
Yes, I did.
Awesome, and a nice folder and everything. Thank you. So tell me a little bit about yourself.
So I actually have lived in Vegas my whole life. Personally, I love. Sorry. So I personally have lived in Vegas my whole life. I love being around people, and I love learning new things. Right now, I'm actually learning a new language, Spanish, because I think it's important to be able to communicate with a variety of people. And I also love doing physical work. During the pandemic, I picked up gardening, and I love my art at the moment.
Wow, that's really interesting. So can you tell me a little bit about your strengths?
So I'm a really good listener, but don't get me wrong, I'm a much better talker. But I think listening skills are even more important. But at the same time, I'm a really good organizer. I think it doesn't matter if it's organizing my closet or planning a trip for my family. The details matter to me. So.
Oh, I really like someone that's very organized. And in fact, just a side note, this is Shane talking. I'm looking for someone that is very detail oriented. So if you guys know anyone that fits that bill, let me know. And yeah, very, very, very good strengths there. What about your weaknesses?
So unfortunately, I like things to go according to plan. So when things don't go the way I planned to be, my anxiety kind of kicks in and it stresses me out. But what I've learned is that coming up with a plan B, it really helps. So if I plan things ahead, I can kind of figure out what to do next.
So having contingency planning, that's good. Why do you want to work here?
So as I said earlier, I love being around people. And so in this job, I get to meet every person that walks through the door. So your restaurant has a really good reputation for high quality food and service. That's the type of restaurant that I want to be proud to work in.
And can you tell me about a recent job or volunteer position you had?
So I worked in the cafeteria food industry. Sometimes I've worked in the kitchen, but I really love working as a server. I get to meet new types of people from all walks of life. Some days are easier than others. I get to set a goal for myself to smile and greet everyone I serve, especially those who seem upset or depressed.
And why did you leave that position?
Honestly, I felt like I left because I started school and I couldn't balance both at the same time.
Okay, and do you have any questions for me?
So your staff has a great reputation in the restaurant industry for customer service, the best in town, actually. So I was wondering, do you have like a program that you put your staff to go through to achieve that status?
Yes, we actually do. Blah, 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 blah.
Yay! Massive fan club in back. Okay, so although not the perfect interview, there was still some small room for improvement, but significantly better.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so what are some of Edgar's like pros? What is he doing right? Yeah.
He was professional. He wasn't super casual in how he talked.
Yes, a little more professional, right? Like he definitely was holding himself to a higher standard, for sure. Yes, in the back.
He was very detailed when introducing himself and was able to like list his weakness, but still provide like a benefit of it.
Yeah, absolutely, right? That's the key, right? We all have weaknesses. You got to answer the questions, but how are we flipping it? Yes, right.
He came off as human, in the sense that he liked gardening. He had these common interests. Oscar, you did a great job too. Like I felt that human in you.
Seriously, you all don't know, right? But this is how he is all the time. It's wonderful. Talk a people person. If you want to know how to talk to people, this is your
Well, I
man.
got you.
Up in the front. Zach, what do you think?
I was gonna say the gardening thing sold me. Honestly, but I think he did a really excellent job of bringing up a weakness and then bringing up a way that he has kind of overcome that weakness. I think that shows good perseverance, especially for somebody you want to hire.
Yeah, totally. Yes, Swan?
He implemented the STAR method in some of the questions that he answered.
Yeah, he was trying at least, right? Like he was bringing up situations, kind of like trying to dive into it. If you couldn't tell it was a script. So. Sabrina?
It seems he really researched the company he was looking for. He asked specific questions about, hey, you guys were best known in town, how do you do this? And then going further, even ask more about how you're working with this.
Yeah, totally. Well, great job, Edgar. Another big round of applause. Great. Okay, so we are actually gonna take a pause from scenarios for a second and stop with our quick tips. I feel like this is kind of our conclusion of our workshop portion, and then we're gonna have some fun with Shane and chat and just get to know each other a little bit better. So do you want to cover our quick tips? Back to you.
Yeah. Thank you, Jenna. So as far as the quick tips that we have here, some of them are some of the things that we've talked about already, but one thing is the first thing that's listed is be on time, which means early. So if you have a 1 o'clock interview, do not show up o'clock. Show up at 12:45, so like 15 minutes early, just so you have enough time. And also budget in extra time. If you're not familiar with the location and where you're going to be parking and things like that, you want to make sure that you're budgeting extra time. It's always better if you get there early, and if you just even have to sit in your car for a little while until, about 15 minutes before the interview. I think that that's really a good gauge there. Another thing that I always am surprised that a lot of people that come in for interviews have not done is a follow-up thank you note. So at a minimum, my expectation is like an email that says thank you. A lot of people I'm seeing don't do that. But what I like is a personalized handwritten thank you card. So I would actually do both. I would send an email immediately that day, thanking them for their time, that you're looking forward to hearing back, and that you're excited about the potential opportunity, something that you might be able to tie in from the interview that we talked about earlier. And then also doing a thank you card, because sending a thank you card, it might take a couple days in the mail. So you don't want the employer to be thinking like, oh my gosh, well, I just interviewed Andrea and she didn't even follow up, to say thank you. So that's something that's important. And then also coming prepared. So bringing a copy of your resume, not anything that's crumpled up or folded up, but maybe even in a nice folder, and any other documents that are requested. So it's always good to have a list of references. Depending on the type of job, like with us, depending on the position, it might be like a writing sample or things like that. So always have a good little packet of your information, including your resume, to be able to provide a hard copy to the employer when they're there. They probably have a copy, but it's always nice to make the process and the interview go as smoothly as possible.
All right. Okay, so do you all feel prepared to interview your life away? Get the best jobs ever. Okay, well, we're gonna continue to get better at this, y'all. I literally say this all the time, but interviewing is one of those things that practice actually doesn't make perfect, but it makes better for sure. If you've never interviewed, I highly suggest you just try, try. So Dua's gonna run through kind of our end of event, just like next steps, things you got going on, things that are next opportunities. And then we're gonna do some Q&A with Shane. If you have questions for her, you'll have the opportunity to come up. Maybe not shake her hand unless she's comfortable, but like elbows or high fives, something like that. We also have cookies in the back. Feel free to take a cookie on your way out. So do it. You want to wrap us up?
Yes, thank you so much. So as you guys know, this is the second of our 5-series Career Leader Certificate workshop. So our next workshop is called Graduate School Prep. So it will be a grand event from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. at the University Gateway Building, room 268 and 269. And obviously we have Zoom and in person available. However, we do have room for only 50 RSVPs. So if you really want to be in person, so make sure you RSVP. And it is a grand event made up of 5 smaller events. So if you can't stay for all 5, you can come and go. And yeah, that's that. And I hope you guys enjoyed it, networked, met a lot of new people, and further enrich your career and professional development.
All right. Big round of applause for Dua. I love it. Who has questions for Ms. Shane? Or just in general, they don't have to questions. Yeah, go ahead.
So at the start of the interview, they usually ask tell me a few things about yourself, and I mean, I get such on that every single time. I don't know to say professional or personal. I'm just curious as to what I should say.
I think it's okay to ask for clarification if you're not sure on any question that might be posed to you. So don't be afraid to ask. If they're asking about you, you can just, I would start with maybe a little bit about just your personal background, and then how it flows into your professional or what you're seeking to do, the goals that you have related to your professional career. But yeah, and I would just have, not this long-winded, dissertation type of thing, but at least a little bit of something to let them get to know you, because as we talked about earlier, the goal really is for you to get them to like you and to show your personality and the type of person. It's so hard in such a small snippet, of time to really know the type of person. And that's what's scary on the employer side too, right? Is like, okay, well, if I hire this person, they just seem like they're okay, and then people come in and we're like, oh my gosh, where did this person come from? So I think just setting your best foot forward and being relaxed, as we talked about, sharing a little bit about yourself, letting them in. One of the comments that you made earlier, I think when we were doing the interviewing, the mock scenarios, was that with Edgar, he was, or no, was it? No. Yeah, okay, yeah, with Edgar, that, like, the comment about like the gardening, or just like getting to know a little bit about him, like who he was just as a person. I think that's important. Most employers want to be able to understand like really who you are. So that's a great question.
So with the writing on the pay code, how formal should you be? Like, can it be chill, or do you have to like really cut through?
So the question, if you guys weren't able to hear, is how formal should you be with the handwritten thank you note that you would send afterwards? And I would still, it's a little bit less formal than something like a letter, right? But I would still say, dear, Mr. Smith, unless they told you, call me Stan or whatever. But I would still say, dear, blah, 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 comma, and then do it, like nice, neat handwriting. So take your time, even if you don't have the best penmanship, take your time and, write it in your best handwriting. And it doesn't have to be super long. It can just, be, it was a pleasure to meet you on Tuesday for my interview. I'm so grateful for the opportunity to be considered for XYZ position. And I believe that I would be an asset and be able to contribute, in this way. Please feel free to reach out if there's anything else that, that I can do, or any questions that you might have. Something very simple. It doesn't have to be, paragraphs and paragraphs, but maybe just a few sentences. Yeah, good question.
We have a question on
Oh,
Zoom.
okay.
Sorry, we'll go to you in a second. So Mania wants to know if you have any good tips on how to balance work with raising children, which
Oh my
I think you
gosh.
know something about that.
I know a little bit about that. So how to balance work with having a family and children. So as I think I have 5 children. I've got 5 daughters actually. It may keep me really, really busy. My oldest are twins that are actually in college. Now they're in their 3rd year. But the way that I balance it is I've had to be really good about time management. And so being organized, making sure that I'm setting aside time and prioritizing the things that I need to get done. So I live by my calendar. If it's not in my calendar, then I can't guarantee that I'll be there, right? So that's the way that I, keep myself organized. And even within my calendar, I actually time block. So there are tasks that we could spend hours upon hours doing. Like for me, it's emails. I could be responding to emails all day long. But I set aside time to do that throughout my day. And then if there are certain projects or tasks that I need to complete within the week, there's one thing that I do, it's called Monday Hour 1. I don't know if you've heard of that. So the concept is basically that the first hour of your week, or it could be the last hour. So I like to look ahead. So on Friday, for example, I'm looking at my schedule for the week ahead and the things that I need to get done. And you're basically jotting down the things that you need to complete for that coming week. So you write them all down, you have a list, you prioritize them, and you put them into your calendar in different time slots for when you're going to dedicate time to doing that. So of course, there are things that are going to change. Things might take longer, they might take less time. There might be other things that come up that you have to reprioritize. But for me, that's been a really, really good way to make sure that I'm getting the things done that I need to get done, and I'm not feeling overwhelmed. So it's really easy when you have a lot of things to do and your time is the most valuable resource, really. And if you're feeling all these pulls and demands on your time, it can feel overwhelming. So that's one thing that I found has been helpful for me, is really budgeting time. And then I even move things around, and then making sure as I'm prioritizing the things that I need to do on the work side, that I'm setting aside time for my family, so every day I put it on my calendar, and I try to plan a menu ahead of time. So that's one less thing that I'm thinking about, like the day of, like, oh my gosh, what are we gonna eat for dinner? So I try to plan, so it's all about planning ahead. In anything that you do, I think the more organized you are, the easier your life is. And I have, my friends and family and other people that are like, oh my gosh, like, how do you do everything that you do? Like, I see you working, like, I'm really active on social media, by the way. So if you want to connect with me on Facebook, it's Shane Jasmine. Instagram is Shane Jasmine as well. And then I think you have my LinkedIn. And on LinkedIn, I post a lot of things that are also personal because the work that I do is so personal with people. So that's another tip though. Just be careful about your social media. That's another thing that employers look at, right? So you don't want to have things that are inappropriate, things that might be a bad reflection of, who you are or how you want to be able to present yourself. And then as you are a professional, also keeping in mind the things that would be appropriate for, posts and things like that moving forward. Did I answer that question?
Yeah.
Are you good? Okay.
Does anyone else have maybe one more question? Who wants to go? Duke it out.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. We have two. Let's do two more. Is that
Yeah,
okay?
two more.
Okay, we'll do you. Okay.
Yeah, so in your experience, have you ever felt intimidated or less confident in the environment that you're in as a woman of color? And if so, like, what are some ways that you overcame that? Because I know, like, your background is extremely impressive, and I would just like to know how you got there.
Oh, good question. So the question for those of you that may not have been able to hear is, have you ever felt intimidated, insecure about being, in a position where, like you're a woman of color? So I have had situations where, being in the legal profession, a lot of times people don't presume that I'm a lawyer. They're like, oh, when's the lawyer going to show up? And I'm like, hello, that's me. This is my firm. Young Law Group, yeah, that's my name. So, but even at the law firms, when I would go and meet with clients, sometimes I would have that, and it's not such a, it's not as prevalent as it was years ago, but it's still there because in some industries and some types of businesses, it is still sometimes predominantly male, and sometimes white male is what we see a lot of, but there are also on the other side of that opportunities because, when you are different, you have something else, a different perspective, and a lot of people are wanting to bring in more diversity, and there's a lot more opportunity there. So I've always used it as a way to be unique, and I know that when I show up, people are looking at me because I look different, I don't look like everyone else. And I take it, I just take it as a compliment. So I think if you come into it with that type of confidence, not arrogance, but confidence, right? And you hold yourself, in a certain regard, and you present yourself as such, then people are going to treat you like that. Yeah, you teach people how to treat you. That's one thing that I've learned.
Good advice.
Mm-hmm. And then you had one, yeah.
Yeah, so what are some, I guess, tips or questions that you would give people that are doing interviews to get into like medical school or law school? Because I know that's different than
So tips for people that are interviewing for positions or to get into law school or medical school. So one thing is I would do your research. We were talking about research. So research, and not only for the benefit of you being able to express why, this is a good opportunity, a good match, but also to make sure that that's something that you are really interested in. And I know that for me, I was always kind of told that I was going to be a lawyer. And when I was young, I can share with you a little bit about my background, or you can watch my on-demand webinar, which I go into my like backstory. But basically, my dad was an entrepreneur. He got taken advantage of by his own attorney. And so I saw this happen as a young girl, and my dad was always like, you have to be a lawyer so this doesn't happen to you, and you can help people. And so that was really my thing, is I wanted to help people. And as I got older and went into college and then found out I was pregnant, and that wasn't part of my plan. I was supposed to start law school the fall of 2000, and that's when my twins were born. I started thinking like, well, is this really what I want? Or is this just something that I've always just, been told, or, that was just the plan for me. So I think that really understanding what it is that you want, and also knowing that sometimes you might make decisions that end up taking you down a path, but it doesn't mean you're stuck there. There were times when I was in practice, I was working for another, the big firms, and I wasn't satisfied with that work. And I was like, oh, I don't even think I want to be a lawyer anymore. But then, things happened, and I had other opportunities, and other doors opened up, and now I love it. I love what I do. I love having my own firm. And that was not something that I set out to when I went to law school. It was never on my radar. So I think really doing the research for yourself, and then also really understanding what those next steps are. Talk to people that are in that industry, that have gone through that experience, that can tell you, I didn't really know what I was getting into when I went to law school, and that your grades are what dictate the type of jobs that you have opportunities for. And so if you're not the top third of your class, then you're not even getting the interviews for the big firms. So, that's something that you should do research on and really understand, really preparing for like the entrance exams, like for law school, it's the LSAT. So you want to do really well on that. Take the prep courses, talk to people, call the schools, like call the law school and ask about the resources that they have and what they recommend for incoming students, finding out what the expectations or standards are for like the GPAs, test scores, doing the things ahead of time to really prepare yourself, like the extracurricular types of activities that will get you, to that next level, and also to set you apart. That's really the goal, because so many, people are looking at applications that are submitted, and if you can't stand out on paper, that it's a barrier, right? So really good question. Thank
Awesome.
you.
All right. So big round of applause. For giving your time. It means the world. So, all right. So Cookie's in the back, Shane in the front. So you can come ask questions, chat with her. Her card is up here, and then you can grab a cookie in the back. If you have one of these beautiful red tickets, you should know if you got one when you came in, because only certain people got them. So if you got a beautiful red ticket, come see me in the front. You get a fun Starbucks gift card. So yay, who doesn't love Starbucks? And then on top of that, we have 2 scholarships that we're going to be giving away. So Ryan, you're on Zoom, but hi Ryan, I hope you're still there because you're our scholarship winner on Zoom. Ryan, like put something in the chat if you're there. Oh yes, okay, good, super, yay Ryan. And so many of you asked amazing questions, but our in-person scholarship goes to my purple shirt. Tell everybody your name.
I'm Allie.
I know your name. They need to know your name.
Oh.
All right. So those are our scholarship winners. I hope you had fun today. For those of you that are asking about law school, which is essentially a lot of you, during our graduate school prep activity, during the grad program coordinator panel, we'll actually have a rep from the law school there. So that would be a really, really good time to come and ask questions about law school. And like Dua said earlier, you can come and go whenever you want. You can come to a session, leave. You can do it on Zoom. You can come in person, whatever floats your boat. So thanks for coming. Hope you learned a lot. Shane in the front, Cookies in the back. Enjoy your evening.
just want to say, you said you have no weaknesses. I was like, you're right. You're right.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, by the way. You mentioned that when did you know, like, when did you like realize that?
We don't just so for me, I was at professional environment, like not ready to go on that would be a big difference. But it was just, I like the risk, like how irritating the political side of like having to jump through all these hoops to be like partner. I saw the partners there and it was all ahead of the line. And that's not what I wanted. And I wasn't really feeling fulfilled with it. And
so it was really just.
Yeah.
So it'll be all posted on our.
Yeah, so if you email either me or Melissa.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so we are able to work together, and that's what's happening next year.
Thank you.
No problem. Thank you. We include our daughter. You know, our team is not that big. We're hiring.